Chapter 6: Accountability Without Fear. Accountability has a branding problem. Most leaders say they want it. Few people experience it positively. Somewhere along the way, accountability became synonymous with pressure, correction, and consequence, something to endure rather than something that strengthens a team. The association didn't happen by accident. For many people, accountability has been delivered through fear of being called out, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being labeled a problem, even fear of losing a job. Over time, fear trained accountability creates compliance, but it quietly destroys ownership. I didn't understand this early on. I believed accountability meant holding people to a standard and addressing issues quickly when they missed it. That belief wasn't wrong, but it was incomplete. What I missed was how accountability was experienced, not just how it was enforced. And experience is everything. Fear based accountability is efficient in the short term. People respond quickly, behavior changes fast, results can improve almost overnight. From a distance, it looks like leadership is working, expectations are clear, standards are enforced, the leader feels in control. But fear has a shelf life. When accountability is driven by fear, people don't lean in, they protect themselves. They avoid risk, they hide mistakes, they wait for direction instead of taking initiative. Accountability becomes something done to them, not something they own. Fear doesn't eliminate problems, it delays them. I started to see this pattern when the same issues kept resurfacing. Conversations were happening, corrections were being made, and yet the underlying behavior wasn't changing. People complied when watched and reverted when pressure shifted elsewhere. At first, I assumed the problem was effort. It wasn't. The problem was ownership. People were meeting expectations because they had to, not because they believed in them or felt responsible for the outcome. Accountability without ownership is fragile. It depends entirely on supervision and pressure. And pressure is never evenly distributed. Accountability without fear begins with clarity. Not clarity after the fact, but clarity before expectations are enforced. People can't own what they don't understand. Leaders often assume expectations are obvious because they make sense to them. Because what is obvious to a leader with context is often ambiguous to someone without it. I learned that accountability conversations go better when expectations are defined early, reinforced often, and explained clearly. When people know the standard and the reason behind it, accountability stops feeling personal and starts feeling fair. Clarity removes confusion. Confusion breeds fear. Accountability without fear requires consistency. Nothing erodes trust faster than selective enforcement. When standards change based on who's involved, how busy leadership is, or how much pressure exists that day, people stop taking accountability seriously. They wait to see how things will be handled this time. I had to confront my own inconsistency. There were moments when I addressed issues quickly, and moments when I let them slide because something else felt more urgent. From my perspective, I was prioritizing. From the team's perspective, the message was mixed. Consistency isn't rigidity, it's reliability. One of the biggest shifts for me was realizing that accountability is not about catching people doing something wrong. It's about reinforcing what right looks like. The reframing changed how conversations felt, for me and for the team. Instead of approaching accountability with frustration or disappointment, I began approaching it with curiosity and clarity. What happened? What got in the way? What needs to change next time? Those questions don't lower standards, they strengthen them. Fear based accountability focuses on blame. Ownership based accountability focuses on learning. When mistakes happen, and they will, leaders have a choice. They can use the moment to assert authority, or they can use it to build capability. One produces silence, the other produces growth. I learned that how leaders respond to mistakes determines whether people bring problems early or hide them until they're unavoidable. Fear teaches people to manage perception. Trust teaches people to manage reality. Reality is where improvement happens. Accountability without fear also means separating behavior from identity. When feedback targets who someone is instead of what they did, people become defensive. When feedback focuses on actions and expectations, people stay engaged. They can adjust behavior without feeling personally attacked. This sounds simple. it isn't. Under pressure, it's easy to let frustration leak into tone, timing, and language. I've had to catch myself more than once, pausing before responding, choosing words carefully, reminding myself that the goal is progress, not release. That pause matters. Another mistake leaders make is delaying accountability in the name of being kind. Avoidance feels compassionate in the moment. It spares discomfort. It preserves harmony temporarily. But unaddressed, it doesn't disappear. They grow. And when accountability finally arrives, it lands heavier than it needed to. I've learned that timely accountability is one of the most respectful things a leader can offer. It gives people a chance to correct course before patterns harden and frustration builds. Kindness without clarity isn't kind, it's confusing. Accountability without fear doesn't mean lowering expectations, it means raising ownership. When people feel trusted, they hold themselves to a higher standard than any leader could enforce alone. They don't wait to be corrected, they correct themselves. They take pride in the work because it reflects on them, not just on leadership. That's the shift. From accountability as enforcement to accountability as identity. This kind of accountability takes discipline. It requires leaders to be clear before being firm, consistent before being corrective, curious before being confrontational. It requires emotional control, especially under pressure, because fear is contagious. Leaders set the tone. If accountability is delivered with frustration, the team learns to brace. If it's delivered with clarity and respect, the team learns to own. Accountability without fear doesn't remove consequences, it contextualizes them. Consequences are explained, expected, and applied consistently. They don't come as surprises, they don't feel personal. They reinforce standards instead of undermining trust. The predictability is what makes accountability sustainable. Pressure will always tempt leaders to use fear. Fear is fast, fear is loud, fear gets immediate attention. But fear doesn't build teams that last. Leaders who are built for pressure understand that accountability rooted in trust doesn't weaken performance, it strengthens it. It creates environments where people take responsibility because they believe in the work and trust the leader, not because they're afraid of the outcome. Accountability without fear isn't soft leadership, it's confident leadership. It's leadership that doesn't need intimidation to get results. Leadership that understands people don't perform best when they're scared, they perform best when they're clear, supported, and trusted. That kind of accountability holds under pressure. It is what separates leaders who manage behavior from leaders who build ownership. In the next chapter, we'll look at what happens when leaders stop managing tasks and start developing people, and why that shift changes not just performance, but the future of the organization itself. Because great leaders don't just get the work done, they build people who can carry the work forward. That concludes this episode of Built for Pressure. Built for Pressure is a copyrighted work by Richard Levene. All rights reserved. This content may not be reproduced, distributed, or repurposed without permission. If this episode resonated, you can find the full framework at richardlevene.com.